Welcome back. My name is Amanda, and if you saw the title of this video down here, up here, wherever it is, and you thought this video was gonna be a bit of a downer, that's not it. I don't want this to be super negative. I just want to talk about some of the things so far this season that have ended up being a little disappointing. It's still fairly early on in the competitive season when we talk about going to the CrossFit Games and who will be there in August. We haven't had any of the semifinals yet. We're kind of in this in-between point between quarterfinals and semifinals, but we have had some big stories and some big news that has impacted the season already. And I kind of want to talk about some of the things that just aren't ideal, but may lead to some new great storylines that we haven't seen unfold just yet. So first, there are a lot of great athletes that we're not going to see compete this year. And some are like pretty disappointing and last minute disappointments. So we have someone like Tia-Clair who's not competing this year. She's having a baby, which is awesome. And we were kind of hinted that there was a chance that she wasn't going to compete this year. At the end of the CrossFit Games last year, it was kind of announced that it was going to be her last season.
For the 6th time, and for the final time, Tia is the fittest woman on earth.
Whether or not that's true, it was going to at least temporarily be the last time we see her on the floor because now she's having this baby. So I feel like the blow there was softened a bit. So that's not really one of the most disappointing and even in that region, because the Oceania region is been hit hard by the loss of some athletes this year. Cara Saunders, fantastic athlete, another top 10 athlete. I feel like people forget that she is still in the top 10. She finished 7th at the games last year. She's not competing either because she is actually also pregnant. Congratulations to her. That is awesome. I'm so excited to see all the content she's putting out throughout her pregnancy, but a little disappointed we're not going to see her on the floor at the games or at the Oceania semifinal competing this year. So another disappointment there. Keeping on the Oceania disappointing loss of athletes, Con Porter is injured. He's not going to be competing. And the most recent athlete who had the potential to win the games, although obviously Tia did too, and so does Cara, but is still sort of on his upward trajectory, Ricky Garrard is not competing because he is also injured. And that one is a little wild to me because of the way it happened.
Long story short, I come off my mountain bike about 8-9 days ago now. Landed on my shoulder and I have ruptured the AC joint in my shoulder.
He was mountain biking when he got injured, and we're trying to, I think people want to professionalize CrossFit. And if we're going to treat this like a professional sport, and if we're going to get the respect of a professional sport, I think it's difficult to get that when you have athletes doing things like that. People like Steph Curry and LeBron James, they're not allowed to go mountain biking like that. The NBA has rules against that. The teams have rules against that. You can't put yourself at risk in that way because you're putting an asset for the team at risk. So it's part of your job, part of your contract not to do those things. And it just seems a little bit careless to have done that. I understand that it's something that he loves outside of CrossFit and how people have to do those things to have balance in their lives, but it is disappointing and not ideal for the season, for the sport, and for seeing the best people get to the games in August. But the good thing about all of that is there's going to be new storylines, and there's going to be athletes that are going to surprise us, that we're going to see on the podium at the games this year potentially, that we weren't expecting to see prior to all of these other people taking a step back for the year. So that's what I mean when I'm saying, like, these are disappointments, but they're going to lead to, I'm sure, some of the biggest storylines this coming year. So you gotta take the good with the bad. Another thing I'm surprised about, and it's not really a new thing, it's just sort of something that I guess I am continuously disappointed about, that I think CrossFit has to focus on in the future, is really spotlighting the Masters athletes. We have some really amazing Masters athletes, and all of their competitions leading up to the games are online, and we really don't get to see them until the games. And I feel like that makes people sometimes a little bit less invested in those athletes because we don't see them until their championship. We don't get to build these relationships. When we watch things like semifinals and they talk about these athletes and what led them to the semifinal, what they're dealing with in their lives, what they've overcome, those kind of things draw you in. Now you are more connected with these athletes. You don't have that in the Masters because all we see them at is their final stage. And on that same topic, only taking the top 10 in each division is disappointing. And it hasn't always been like that. There was a time when the top 20 went, which I think would still make sense for a lot of the age groups. Now, not necessarily all of them. You could argue that some of the older age groups have less people that enter the open, less people that do quarterfinals. So maybe you could argue that you could still have a reduced field in those age groups, but the younger age groups are very, very challenging to do well in and have some serious talent there. I think I saw a stat, and I can't find it now, so it could be wrong. If I find it, I will edit it in here somewhere. But I saw a stat somewhere that basically said it is easier to make the North America West men's semifinal in the open division than it is to make semifinals in the 35, 39-year-old men's division for the age groups. So that gives you an idea of just how hard it is. And I want to pull up the quarterfinals leaderboard for the men's 35 to 39-year-old division and just read off some of the names who are in this division. And remember, only 10 of these are going to go to the games. And these are just names that are instantly recognizable to me. There are some I might just happen to miss just while looking through the list real quick that are also recognizable, or some that I don't really know about as well, but are really legit athletes. And I mean, everyone on this list is obviously a fantastic athlete, even the ones I'm not naming. But these are people that I'm gonna name that, you know, have, I hate to say it, but star power, have a name that's going to bring people in. And some of these guys, they're not gonna make it to the games because they only take 10 in this very competitive 35 to 39-year-old division. Sam Dancer, Rich Froning, Brian Wong, Scott Panchek, Papadopoulos, Frederick Agidius, Paul Tremblay, Elijah Muhammad, Dan Bailey. I mean, there is just Joe Scally. He might even make semifinals. He might not even make the semis. There are a lot of fantastic names on this list. I just named 10 that I believe all have experience at the games on some level, and they likely won't all make it. So I think these Masters athletes need to be spotlighted better, maybe having different ways to get to the games, kind of going back to the sanctional way of doing it, like a certain number are going to qualify through the quarterfinals, semifinals virtually like we have now, but maybe do 10 that way, and then another 10 spots from other events, kind of like we have the sanctionals, like from Wadapalooza. Whoever wins that gets a berth to the games. There are a couple major Masters competitions out there. Maybe make those competitions lead to the games, like Legends. Like if you win Legends, you get a berth to the games, and get people from some different places so that we can actually see some of them in person competing, but then also have the online element, so you sort of have both. Like I said, kind of like the sanctional format we used to have, or kind of like the combination of having last chance qualifier and in person, or that year that we had some people qualify directly from the Open and other people from Sanctionals. I think maybe doing something like that, where we have a combination of, yes, here is the online version, so it's very accessible to all the different masters all over the world, but here's also some in-person options if that's the avenue you want to take to get to the games. I think that would be a cool way to see more masters, and then also I think it'd be really awesome to expand some of those more competitive divisions, the younger divisions, into having 20 spots at the games and not 10, because I think we are missing out on some really awesome athletes. And lastly, something that's a little bit disappointing is we're not going to see Rich Froning competing with a team this year. I think Rich Froning brought so much more excitement to the team competition, more than it ever had before. Not that there wasn't any, because I remember the team competition before Rich, and there were certainly years and times where it was still exciting, but Rich brought something extra. Having Rich on a team, having one of the most famous, maybe arguably the most famous and best CrossFitters to ever compete on the team side, brought a ton of eyes and attention to it. And he's not going to be there this year, and he's not going to have his team. There's no Mayhem Freedom. There will be Mayhem teams, but there is no Mayhem Freedom. Freedom is retired, it is gone, and that is sad. Also, I mentioned Rich in the 35 to 39-year-olds. He has said multiple times that he doesn't think he'll be competing at the games. He's just going to do the online portion of this. So he may not be at the games at all. But back to the teams, it's a little bit disappointing not to see Mayhem there and not to get to see teams take on Mayhem. But flip side of that, because like I said, a lot of these things have flip sides. The flip side of that is the team competition is a little bit more open, although I do think Proven is the team to beat now and the team that everyone has their eyes on. But the Invictus team has a lot of experience as a team, works together a lot, has had a lot of success at the games, and is returning all the people that were on the podium last year. So I do think there is potential for the Proven team, even though they look at the obvious front runner, to not necessarily be the obvious front runner come day 2 at the games. Because I think the experience that a team like Invictus and a team like the Oslo team have is going to benefit those teams competing against Proven, which is a team that's come together, and they do work out together now sometimes, but they're not working out together in the same way at the same amount of time as those Invictus and Oslo teams are. So I think the team competition is going to be interesting, just a little bit disappointing not having Mayhem Freedom there and not having Rich Froning. Let me know if there's anything that's disappointed you this season. Leave it in the comments below. I want to hear about it, and if you have a positive spin on it, I'd like to hear that too. I might do another video about things that I'm really excited for this season, and some of those were probably talked about here because I tried to give a positive spin to the disappointments, because we can be both, but realize there's 2 sides to every coin, and you know, if something feels a little bit disappointing, there's probably going to be something better right behind it. Anyway, appreciate you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.